Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I made a DIY window bench for my bedroom and the no-sew cushion cover that goes on top of it. So in my bedroom, I have this awkward nook. I can't stand awkward nooks. And immediately when I saw it, I thought, I need to fill that with something. And the perfect thing is a DIY built-in bench. There's something about a built-in that just makes a space feel intentional and loved and like it was meant to be there. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. Here's a list of all the tools and supplies and materials that you're gonna need if you also wanna make this. So the first thing that I do with any project is to visualize, and I use a very fancy tool to do this. It's called blue painter's tape. I'm serious, you guys, this is gonna solve you so many problems later on if you do this step. For me, I taped out exactly where I wanted my bench to go, and I saw how high I wanted it to be just to make sure that the seat was exactly where I wanted it. And to start building any sort of built-in, you start with the framing. So for this space, I decided to actually make this bench floating because I plan on switching out this floor later on. And so this is kind of a freestanding bench, but it's pushed back in there. It's not gonna wiggle and move around, but it easily could have been secured to the wall, or I could have just used those studs in the wall and really built it into the wall. And what I used for framing for this bench was 2x4s. So I like to kind of have 2x4s every 1.5 feet. And I like to think of the way that it's gonna be used. Since this is something that's gonna be sat on, I'm going to layer my 2x4s so that the top lays on top of the side piece, and it makes it so that as the weight's going down, it's supported. So when screwing together the frame, and this is something that I always do, so pay attention because this will change your life. If you get star head screws and you use those, they're not gonna strip, and a lot of them are self-tapping, which means you don't even need to pre-drill and your wood's not gonna split. It makes it so much easier. For this plywood top, you'll notice that I have it overhanging just a little bit. You're gonna see why later, but this is where you start thinking, how do I want it to look at the end? So I had this plywood top, but it doesn't look pretty. That raw edge is yucky, and there's this really cool thing called edge banding. And what it is essentially, it's this thin wood veneer, and you literally iron it on the side to make it look like a solid piece of wood, and then it just finishes out your plywood to make it look perfect. Once you've ironed it on, there's this really cool tool where you can kind of slice off the top to get it the exact right width that you want. And then to finish it off, you can just take a little bit of a 220 sander and smooth it all, and then it's ready for paint or stain, whatever you want. So I decided to paint my bench black, but not just any black. This is my favorite black, and I use it on all of my projects. It is called, are you ready for this? Sherwin-Williams Black Magic. And it's the perfect black because it has no undertones, no blue, no green, no purple, and it's a soft black. And I really like to use it in a sheen like matte or satin because I don't like it to be too shiny. Okay, so here's the really fun part where the bench totally transforms. To finish it out, I decided to go with a vertical planking, and I used an MDF shiplap that has pre-spaced gaps because I wanted it to look all perfectly even. So you'll notice now why the framing was important. See how now I'm nailing this into the top and the bottom, and it's got something to attach to all the way to the edges. And I'm just using my brad nailer. I'm nailing into the lip. I'm trying to avoid overusing nails so I don't have too many to fill. But you can also see this is why I had that little overhang of the plywood so that the shiplap comes up and meets it just perfectly. So the bench is looking good. You could be done. But do you want to be done? No, you don't, because you want a soft place to sit so that you can stare out your window. So we're making a no-sew window bench seat cushion, okay? Again, the first thing that we're gonna do here is visualize. How did I visualize? I grabbed a bunch of t-shirts from my closet, threw them all over the bench, and decided which one I thought looked best in the space. Visualize. Okay, these are the two colors that I've narrowed it down between. They're battling it out. This one ties in a little bit more with my bed, but this one kind of like punches it up a little bit. Okay, so everybody take a deep breath. I know the most intimidating part of a project is finding the materials. So the things that are the trickiest to find for this project are the foam and the fabric, and I'm gonna show you how to do that easily. So for the foam, you actually can just walk into a Home Depot or Lowe's, and there's a section back in the camping section where you can find 2 foot by 2 foot and 2 foot by 4 foot foam. Find the perfect one, make sure it's just the right amount of softness, check the thickness, and get it exactly like what you want. You can also look for it at a fabric store, but in my experience, it's more expensive there. So the next intimidating piece about this is fabric. I don't like walking into a fabric store. It stresses me out. But did you know that you can actually just walk down like the curtain aisle or a bedding aisle and you can find what you want there, and that can totally work also. Look, I just found this linen duvet cover right here. It's like almost the perfect match. See that? That's my inspiration t-shirt color. Okay, testing this color out to see if I'm gonna love it. And I think I am. I love it. So let me show you what goes into making a no-sew cushion cover. You've got your base. It doesn't need to be this thick. You've got your foam pad. Then you have batting, which you'll wrap around the foam and underneath and staple. And then you've got your fabric, which you'll also wrap around all of that and staple it. And then at the end, you'll have your awesome cushion. So cool. I took my plywood outside because I needed to spray some adhesive onto the foam so it didn't shift around, and that stuff is smelly. So I took it outside, and then once I had all of my foam in place, it was time to cut it. Now this is one of the most satisfying things about making a bench cushion is you can actually just take a serrated knife, or better yet, if you have like a turkey knife, and it cuts through it just like butter. It's so satisfying. So the foam is cut perfectly to the shape of the plywood, and now it's time to wrap this baby. So next up, batting. So I brought everything back inside. You're gonna lay your batting down on the ground. That's what I did. You're gonna do it too, because you trust me by now, don't you? Then I laid down my foam and my plywood. Foam side down, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna wrap this batting around it and staple it. So now you're left with the corners. Here's the deal, guys. Corners suck. We all need them, and there's a way to do it to make it all okay. Here's what I think about when I'm thinking about corners. Which side am I actually seeing? How much do I really need to care about this corner? Another tip is you're gonna staple in as close as you can to wherever that little angle is. So you've got the edge and the edge. You're gonna staple in as close as you can to that so that you just have that excess fabric. You can cut and remove some of the excess fabric so you don't have so much to work with. But in the end, as long as when that cushion's flipped over and the side that you see looks good, nobody's gonna know. This corner was a pain in the butt because it was such a severe angle that it required me to pretty much just throw a million staples at it and pray that it all worked out. And guess what? It did. So the batting's all wrapped around it, and now it's time for the fabric. Steam the fabric first, because when you get it wet, it actually can kind of stretch a little bit, and you wanna know exactly what you're working with so that it later doesn't have wrinkles. Now with this fabric, I did the exact same thing as I did with the batting. I started from the middle, and I worked my way left to right, and then I went to the other side. I started in the middle, I worked left to right. And something to be mindful of that my mom was teaching me is to be aware of the grain of your fabric and just make sure that it's not like working its way at a weird angle. You want to keep it nice and straight.
Oh, that's nice.
So same thing with this fabric. When you get to the corners, they're a pain in the butt, but just wrap it like a present. The more severe the angle, the trickier it's gonna be. You can cut out some excess fabric to make it a little bit easier, but pretty much if you just pay attention to which side is the front and you're folding it and wrapping it and stapling it and making it as tight as possible, it's gonna be okay. The less severe of an angle for a corner, the easier. You're pretty much just gonna give a little gift to yourself and wrap it like a present. Make sure that as you're folding it like a present, that you're folding it so that the fold is on the back side, the side that you're not gonna see. Be aware of which side is the front. Nobody's gonna pick it up and look at the back, and if they are, like, you're kicked out of the house. What are you doing? So once I stapled the fabric and I cut off all the extra so it was ready, I flipped it over and ba-ba-bum, the no-sew bench cushion. Then you test it out in place and you just hope that it fits.
Moment of truth. Me and my giant trapezoid. Okay.
It did. And it looks adorable. And it is so relaxing. And it's my new favorite place. And that's it. It's not too hard, right? A DIY window bench. Now I have other projects like this and other DIY tutorials, and if you're interested, I'll link some below in the description and make sure to check them out.